Hi everyone, welcome to Market Intel, the show that tells you what's happening in the front row with those actually working with SME businesses. Today we've got our special guest and landlord, Rodney Hide.
Indeed, well, we've got two great tenants here. So I don't normally do these, but for good tenants I make an exception.
Nice, excellent. So for anyone out there, so obviously Rodney had a long-standing career in politics.
Yes, I was in Parliament for 15 years and I did 3 years as a minister and sort of 7 years as leader of the Great ACT Party.
Nice, and then obviously Dancing with the Stars.
And Dancing with the Stars, which, I didn't win. And that, I'm slowly coming right with therapy.
Nice. But most importantly, you do bake and mean sourdough, which you have delivered to our front door. It's still steaming on occasion.
I love baking bread. I don't know why. It's very satisfying. And I've got to eat a lot just to do market research and test it. Yeah.
We're happy to test out any new flavours.
Yes, okay.
You know where we work from.
So these conversations are pretty casual. What I want to touch on today is obviously COVID and the budget. And I've talked a little bit about the budget. So we talked to Cameron Baggery last week, and a lot of business owners aren't really happy with this budget that's been released. And obviously you've seen a few budgets in your time. So I thought it'd be great to sort of get your views on that and sort of really kicking off with one thing that I think that your ACT Party has been very vocal about as well at the moment is that $140 billion. It's a truckload of debt, isn't it? Is that too much debt, in your opinion, for what's going on at the moment?
Yes, I'm very biased because before going into this lockdown, I despised this government more than I've ever despised anything in my entire life. So I'm very open about that. I just find them incompetent. And it irritates the heck out of me because there seems to be this sort of airy-fairy, facile nonsense. And the response to COVID and then the economic response just leaves me shaking my head in total despair. And I think that's bad enough, but the fact that the voters seem to lap it up is more astonishing to me. So all that's sort of by way of background, that I'm not a lover of this government, which puts me, I think, in a very small minority, which, being the leader of the ACT Party, I'm well used to. But it is a truckload of money, and all that's happened, this is great politics, because government will always misspend money, because when you're in business and you're investing $1 million, it's a big deal. And you check it, and you check it, and your bank checks it, and your financial advisors, they check it. And unfortunately, when you're in politics, $1 billion just rolls off the tongue. There's a great political story they tell about teaching a politician, what $1 billion looks like. And it goes like this, that, picture a $100 bill. They say this to the new Minister of Finance. Picture a $100 bill. Goes, oh, yeah. And then picture a bundle of them. And there's 100 in a bundle, and that's $10,000. Put another bundle on top, another bundle on top. That's 3 centimetres, and that's $30,000. And if you stack that up to a metre, that's $1 million. A metre. $1 billion is a kilometre. So I want you to understand, Minister, when you talk about $1 billion, it's $100 bills stacked up a kilometre high. Can you picture that now? And he says, no, not really. And that's why it's that. And he said, I'm still trying to imagine a $100 bill. Because $1 billion is that much money. $1 billion will build you a brand new hospital. And so when you say we're spending $1 billion here, 10 billion here, people think it's $1 million. It's $1 billion, it's 1,000 million, it's a kilometre high, not a metre high. And what's happened economically and politically is economically that has to be paid into the future. But politically, all you do as a politician is look to this election. And by piling that problem up into the future, you get through to the election, and of course no politician that's there now is going to be in a position to have to pay this back. But we are, and our kids are. The other problem that happens is when you spend money like this and borrow money like this, you have this terrible misallocation of resources, because the place to invest is where government is backing, And that's not necessarily the best thing for, well, it won't be. So you're dragging investments and effort from productive enterprises and putting them into unproductive ones. So, for example, I love tourism. It's a great thing to have, but you have to question whether the government should be propping it up or racehorsing, because maybe these are industries that actually have to downscale, and that you're doing the very worst thing propping them up rather than allowing your economy to switch across. So it is a terrible thing. It's a terrible misallocation of resources. It's a terrible put onto our future generations. I was reminded by a colleague telling me that when we used to do budgets, it was a big deal 10 years ago because you'd have 600 million of spending in the budget that the government hadn't yet decided how much of that to spend. 600 million, like, oh yeah, because over the next 12 months we'll make some decisions to spend money. This crowd, who was still putting the budget together the week of the budget announcement, they put in 30 billion. 30 billion or 40 billion, I can't remember, sort of rolls off your tongue, doesn't it? And vote for this, and we as ministers will decide over the next 12 months whether to spend it or not spend it, or how we'll spend it. Now that completely not just undermines the economy, but it undermines the parliamentary process, democracy, because the executive now are deciding how to spend $40 billion in the next 12 months, not Parliament. There's no check and balance on any of this. Ministers could just go in and write a cheque for $1 billion. So it is, quite frankly, disgusting. Having said that, I'm very positive. I'm very positive about the economy and about where we'll go. I'm very positive about the world waking up. This is a clampdown of demand. And so you can imagine as we ease the restrictions, that demand coming back, there'll be some adjustments, and I can imagine getting quite a good bounce back if governments don't do too much quantitative easing, don't do too much spending. They're going to waste a lot, but not too much. But more particularly, they get out of the way of business and they open up to the productive sector. And the big thing for New Zealand will be opening up the border, and that's the big unknown. But as soon as we start to ease on that, open up the border, get the foreign students back, get businesses able to come in and out of the country, get the tourists back, I think we could be doing well again.
So where do you think we should be focusing the investment into the economy? You know, there's been a lot of, like 400 million's gone into tourism, which has been criticised as a drop in the bucket. The Green Party have created jobs for planting trees, and there's all this apprenticeship training, isn't there, Sam, for the new apprentices coming on board? Like, is that really doing enough? Is that sort of propping up the businesses that need the support to get through?
No. I mean, 400 million to tourism is a joke. I think it was 1.6 billion to Maori, whatever that is, right, in the economy. So it's a drop in the bucket. And the difficulty is this, it's when you say we, when you say where should we be putting our money and where should we be putting our investment, my question isn't the we, my question is the who. So who should be deciding these things? Now, we tend to always think it's government, and so you've got a bunch of politicians. I mean, think Kelvin Davis, Phil Twyford, you know, Grant Robertson, deciding your investment, my investment, Sam's investment, every New Zealander's investment for us and our kids and their kids where they're going to invest. Now, you wouldn't do it. I wouldn't give Phil Twyford $100 and say, here mate, I know you're very good at this. I'm not going to have any questions, just go for it and let me know how you get on. So it's the who. And I'd much rather it be people investing their own money, working with their banks and their investment advisors, with skin in the game and able to work, and some of them will get it wrong. And when they get it wrong, they'll lose their investment. And then some of them will get it spectacularly right. And if I knew where they should be putting their money, I'd be a very wealthy man, and I don't. And the great thing about a market economy is you recognise that fact. We can't sit here and decide for New Zealand where we should be investing right now. But what we can do is decide who should be doing the investing. And I'm sorry to say it ain't Phil Twyford. It's the people with their own money and with their banks investing, and they will always, over time, find the right things. The great thing about a market economy is how it deals with failure. You put an investment in, it doesn't work out, it's liquidated. Put it here, it doesn't work out, it's liquidated. Put it over here, it works, and suddenly you've got $1 billion company employing thousands of people. Politics and government never admits a failure, and the money just piles in. In fact, the more failure they have, the more money goes in, because you don't have a concept of sunk costs. You have political safe phasing. And I know Phil Twyford quite well, and I thought he was incompetent. And but even I thought he'd build a few houses. I did think he could do that. You've got the whole resources of government, you've got all the money. He'll lose money. They won't be very nice houses, but he'll do it, right? He couldn't build hardly one. So if you can't build a house, which is an everyday thing that private enterprise does and homeowners do, why would you think that this guy and his mates can rebuild an economy? And of course, the other bad thing about all of this is that I admit I'm biased as hell, because there's not a crisis that...
Really?
No.
We had a notice
there's not a crisis that happens or a good time that happens where I don't think the answer is the free market. Because I think freedom is the number one thing you can enjoy in your life, and the number one thing to be a human being, and the number one thing for an economy and a market to survive. So when I see a crisis, I say, great, now's the time for the free market. But of course, what's the other side? They see it as always an opportunity to push their political barrow. Oh, we're going to plant trees. Oh, we're going to have Maori development. Oh, we're going to deal with climate change. And that's not welfare of New Zealand or economy. That's their political view before we had this crisis, right? Now, the great thing about, you'll say the same about me, but my great thing is I'm not telling people how to do with their money. I know that doesn't work. If that worked, East Germany and Cuba and North Korea would flourish. They don't. It's free markets that flourish, whatever the circumstance. And the great thing is, while we have a mixed economy, we still have that free market, we still have those entrepreneurs, and they're the people that are going to do it, and their struggle at the moment is uncertainty. It's not that the borders are closed, it's that we don't know when they're going to open. And my one piece of advice for the government would be, you're going to do some dumb stuff, but one thing you need to do is give some certainty. So tell us about the dumb stuff now, so we can plan around it. And the thing that I would say to businesses is there are always opportunities. That's the great thing about living in a free society, and we're, semi-free. There are always opportunities for you to see. You back yourself, you work hard, and the number one thing always is to look after your customers. That customers. Everywhere you look, it's just customers. You can't do enough for your customers. I can't do enough for my tenants. Because they are what your value is. And I've learnt that. After politics, I got this office, and I thought it was worth something, right? Because you think it's an office, right? But actually, I quickly realised it's worth nothing. The only thing that makes it valuable is a tenant, not the office. And you think, I'll paint this and I'll do this and I'll make it worth more. No, I've got to have happy tenants that are pleased to come to work here and are happy to pay me each week. And that's, every business is like that. And so you cannot do more to look after your, you can't do enough to look after your customers, and in tough times especially so. And I think in easy times we take our customers and our business for granted.
That's awesome. That's actually fantastic advice, isn't it? That's something that no one's really sort of talked about. We've done a lot of interviews over the last wee while with all types of people, and it's not really talked about the customer, has it? So, and it is. You're right. That's what generates the top line, which
that's your value, you know. And I when I took over this office, I had a great customer, and they left, and I thought I hadn't lost anything. And what I should have done is gone to the customer, the tenant, and said, look, I know you need a better place. Tell me what you want, I'll get it for you. Because they were my value, not the building, the tenant. And I could have done a great job looking after them, but I didn't think like that. No, and here's another thing to observe. This has been, this experience, I originally started out life as a biologist. And then I did economics and used to teach science, and then I taught economics. And this COVID experience is a great example of this. And it's the dangers of modelling. So we think modelling is science, and we think modelling is the truth, and it's not. They're models, right? And they're nothing like science, because science is testable hypothesis about how the world works. And so we have climate models that are nonsense, right? Because you can't model the climate in a true way. You can model physics, you can model a bridge, you can model a building, but you can't model a cloud. I've been fascinated and during the lockdown reading all about the epidemiological models, and my concern with them isn't that their coding is rubbish and their assumptions are rubbish. It's the concept that you can have a biological system and you think you can model its future. But we should always remember this. Economic modelling is up there. Well, there's that old joke. Economic modelers are there to make fortune tellers look respectable. Because if a computer model for the economy or a mathematical model for the economy worked, you wouldn't need the economy. You wouldn't need the marketplace.
Well, I don't think any economist has actually gotten it right since the GFC, have they?
No. So you gotta take it with a pinch of salt. With the greatest respect, the economists doing modelling are earning a living, promoting their banks, but their idea that they have any great insight into the future is nonsensical. And so we read too much into their models and not enough into our understanding of our situation and what we know about our particular circumstances. And that's why individual business entrepreneurs and small business can succeed against all the bad forecasts, against all the bad economic advice, because in their circumstances in place, they know things that no one else knows. And that's the key insight about a market economy, that I'm sitting here as this little entrepreneur, if you like, owning this little office, knowing Sam and Dave, and I know things that no one else knows. And I can make this office work, and I can work with you guys to make it work, and that's a success of business. And the whole economy could be turning to rubbish, but we can actually work our way through together with what we know. And the other great thing about economic models and financial planning is no one planned on revenue going to zero.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And what does an entrepreneur do? What does a business person do? We survive. We figure it out. And it's been wonderful to me to watch businesses who I think are wiped out. Like how could you, I use a rental company, and I felt so badly for these two guys because, they'd worked so hard with this rental car business, and I love supporting them. Then bang, the lockdown hits. Well, they just re-engineered the business to do deliveries.
Oh yeah, I know the one you're meaning, yes.
And you think, how clever is that? I would never have thought of that in a million years. But when your ass is hanging out and you're looking at the red ink and you're sitting and you think, what can I do? You find a way. That's what the entrepreneurial spirit is. And that's what will lift this economy out. And there's people watching this show and they'll know their circumstances in place. Yes, we're angry at the government because I hate them. and they're doing it all wrong, and the economists are all doom forecast thing, and then there's entrepreneurs who are eternally optimistic, making it happen, saving their bacon, saving jobs, building the businesses, despite all the odds against them. And I just think that's the key, and that's what's wonderful. And if you want to do anything to help them, just get out of their way.
Because there are those that bury their heads in the sand and they rely on the wage subsidy, but that's going to come to an end. And then there are those that from day one sat there and said, how can I adapt? How can I change? And they will do well, and they will employ people.
The wage subsidies and those government policies aren't to help business. They're to help the politicians. It's like giving someone welfare. It's presented as helping the person.
It is. It's in lieu of a welfare payment.
Yes, but exactly welfare doesn't help you. It traps you. It locks you in. It makes you a supplicant. It diminishes your work effort. And I've got nothing against businesses should put their hand out for everything that's coming their way, because that's what business has to do. That's how you survive. But don't make that a substitute for getting your business going. And the trouble with welfare is, as soon as you start to rely on it, you've had it in life. And again, that's the worry. These subsidies aren't going to allow us to transition, and they just do a bit more to sap the entrepreneurial spirit. What does that mean? It means those that keep their spirit will do even better because there's less competition. So I always think a crisis is a wonderful opportunity. I learned that in politics. Crisis happens, this is good.
So I mean, that's been fantastic. So to summarise, essentially, it's rather than just throwing money at stuff, it's putting trust and empowering our small business owners and entrepreneurs to just bloody get on with it.
Yeah, and we're not sophisticated people. We're not clever people. We don't know differential equations and statistics and how Parliament works. But we can run a business, and we can work hard, and we can grab a broom. The thing I despise about the modern world is that we've got a whole lot of management and risk-averse behaviour that's going on. And a crisis is a good opportunity to push that to one side and actually get on to the business. And it's the owner of a multi-million-dollar business having to grab the broom and sweep the floor, help out on the line. That's the sort of stuff that builds an economy. That attitude, and a crisis brings that attitude to the fore in a lot of people, and they're the people that are going to succeed and lift the rest of us up. And that's again what we need to be very, very mindful that it's a crisis, and act like it's a crisis, and grow up, step up. It's exciting. It's invigorating. I often think every now and then you've got to stand up in whatever career you're in and tip the table over and tell the boss to get stuffed.
I wonder if Alex will do that tonight.
and just walk out, right? And just walk out. And a crisis or a moment like this is an opportunity to do that and rethink, because it's too easy to get too comfortable.
I think it's quite good. You're right. Like I know, being a business owner myself, like going into COVID, it was like, oh my God, what are we actually going to do? And like we had several chats from your caravan over Zoom, office, and like it was what I found actually really beneficial was just getting outside, out of the office, out of the screen, a bit of fresh air with my kids to think and just plan on how will we navigate this water, how will we get through and how do we make shit happen? And so I mean, it's about taking it each day as it goes,
And as what you used to talk to your customers, they're key. I spent on my phone, I'd ring up all my clients every few days, have a chat. They were doing nothing, I was doing nothing. Talk to all the accountants that I know, just through the fact, get to know. Then you get a lot of intel about what's really happening rather than reading the economist's view.
I should also say, apart from talking endlessly, because I've been in lockdown, I haven't been able to talk to anyone, and I get a camera and I think I'm back in politics and I'm talking like that. I should say, despite all the talking, that the number one thing I learned in politics and the number one thing I've relearned in business, and it's the silliest thing, is to listen. And I think it's the hardest thing in the world. And I think particularly with computers and the internet, we tend not to listen. And I thought when you went into politics, you had to do a lot of talking and tell people why they should vote for you. And I found actually the key to being a great politician, all the great politicians are fantastic listeners. And you'd have a person come into your local office and they're very upset about something and they'd tell you their problem. And you'd sit there and you think, oh gosh, this is terrible, you know, and then you think there's nothing I can do actually to help particularly. And you say, look, you know, I don't know. And they say, oh no, it's just lovely to have you listen. And they'd vote for you forever. And I found the same with this office. So when I first started to rent it, people would come in and I'd just talk at them. Oh, this has got this, it's got that, and you won't get a better place, and it's this and it's that. And then I learned to have a prospective tenant come in and say, what do you need? And then listen very intently to what it was they needed. And then I might say, well, actually, I haven't got that, but I know someone that does. Mm. And so, to me, listening and problem solving for other people is the key. And the lockdown was that opportunity, like you're saying. Mm. You could stop, because we tend to get too busy. We tend to equate busyness with productivity. And your lockdown was a great opportunity. I found it for myself. It was a great opportunity just to do nothing and then have to start to think and then start to listen and then start to learn.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're out of time now, but I'm absolutely pumped. That was awesome. You know, like it's that, you know, you got it.
Vote Act.
Awesome.